Welcome, everybody. We're going to start it really shortly. Okay, we'll get it started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Shalom Yam, and I'm your host today. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the event assistant intern with Career Success. We're really happy that you can join the How to Get Hired webinar series for computer science and engineering. Today, we're really happy to have Michael Seals, principal engineer at Riot Games, with us today. And Michael will be sharing tips and tricks on how to get hired within his fields, and hopefully it can help you prepare the career fair that's going to be hosted on October 6th. And I'll be linking the event at the chat below after this introduction. And some of the logistics, friendly reminder, this session is being recorded, and throughout the webinar, you can put your questions in the Q&A section, and you can also upvote if you have a similar questions as other students. And at the end, we'll have a survey, and it will only take you about 5 minutes. So please fill it out, we'll really appreciate it. Before we kick us off, I'm gonna do a land acknowledgement. So the land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Awaswa speaking Yupi tribe. The Amamutsan tribal band comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to Mission Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during the Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to Michael Seals and get it started.
Thanks, Shalom. Yeah, there we go. Let me go ahead and share screen out with everyone. Did that work? You all see screens?
You're good.
Tips to get a tech job. All right, cool. So thank you, and hi everyone for joining us this evening. I appreciate all of you taking time out of your schedule to come see the talk. Tonight's talk is tips to get a tech job. You'll notice it's not exactly how to get a tech job. If only it were that simple that I could do that kind of presentation, I would totally do it. But the reality, as I think you all already suspect based on the questions that I've seen, know that it's not really that easy to just get a tech job. And so my goal here is to provide you with a bunch of tips that you can use to try to improve your chances, make that a better experience. So here is a quick preview of all that we are planning to cover tonight. I know it's a lot of material and we don't have huge amounts of time, so I'm going to tend to move real quickly through it. We are recording this, so if you need to take like detailed notes or there's some section you particularly want to look at, I do recommend you go look at the recording later and then you can pull the notes out. I'll make sure to go bring up each screen so that you can pause it in a video and do that. So everyone tends to assume what the rules of getting a tech job are. They basically, a company posts a job that is a correctly formatted resume, it follows all the right rules, it's very impressive, you deliver all your properly crowdsourced answers, and at the end you get the job. Well, that might be the way it works in blog posts on LinkedIn, but the reality is a lot messier and a lot less satisfying, honestly. So what I want to do tonight is, instead of just sort of like telling you do this, do that, do the other, what I want to start with is kind of the context and the viewpoint of the employer. Why are we hiring you? What is our goal? What are we trying to accomplish? So that you can understand how what you do has the best chance of meeting our goals. Okay, so we're going to talk about all those things that are on the list there. But before we do, I just want to do a reality check with everyone. When it comes to getting a job, there are really no checklists. There's no guarantees. So everything that I tell you, that's my experience, my opinion, my viewpoint. You may well go on a different site and get a totally different opinion from someone else. That is the way the world is, right? Being an expert in a field doesn't make everyone an expert, and it's up to you in any of these situations to take this advice and decide if it works for you, if it's the right thing for you, or if it's the right thing for the situation that you find yourself in. You have to use, getting a job is really about using your intuition and your common sense, and not just following blindly. So hopefully we are all clear with that. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so speaker, so who am I? Why should you trust me? Why should you believe anything I'm saying? So I am a Santa Cruz graduate once upon a time. My BA is in physics, not actually computer science. And I'm a Cal College alumni. My one Santa Cruz claim to fame is that I was in Beard House at Cal College when we started Sammy Slug and the whole banana slug thing in 1986. So I was part of that. I remember taking the t-shirts and the mugs and stuff to the coffee shops way back when. I have more than 30 years of software engineering experience. That experience is split over 3 different industries. My first job that I got was at a company called TRW. It doesn't exist anymore. It's part of Northrop Grumman, but it was aerospace physics related stuff. I then spent about 20 years working at DreamWorks Animation in the animation business. I have credits on about more than 25 films. And for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been at Riot Games working on the game League of Legends. My personal technical career focus has been largely in back-end systems, so services, databases, etc. And I tried to calculate how many of these things I've done in terms of interviewing people. And I conservatively estimate I've seen thousands of tech resumes. I've done hundreds of tech interviews, and I have spent at least 20 years doing as a primary interviewer at all levels up to the CTO. So from entry level to the CTO. So I do have a lot of experience in this, but again, remember, this is just my experience. I've never worked at a startup, so I don't know how that works. I also have never really worked at a small company. All of these 3 companies are relatively large. So bear that in mind. And if you're applying for those kinds of companies, just adjust based on what we talk about as you need to. So let's talk a little bit about the context that I emphasized before. I want you to understand why you are doing what you are doing, because that will help answer many of your questions even before I have to. So to do that, I'm going to use a framework from a guy some of you may have heard of. His name is Simon Sinek. He created this framework to explain understanding of things, like purpose and understanding, and he calls it the golden circle system. And there are different levels in this system. And at the bottom, the most basic one is what. And the what in our case is basically that the company is going to hire someone. What is the result that we are trying to reach? Just the what. It's pretty simple. Everybody understands that. The next level of understanding is a little bit more involved, and this is the how. How do I get a job, right? How does the company hire someone? And that is through resumes, cover letters, and interviews. And we talk about how as being the process. But we're not really sure beyond that, like how or why or whatever is going, we need to do the things that we need to do. And that is primarily because we don't always understand the why. We know we need to make a resume, but what is our goal? What should we put in the resume? What should we put in the cover letter? How should I approach an interview? And to better understand that, you have to unlock the final level of understanding, which is the why. What is the purpose behind hiring hiring someone? And I'm just kind of curious, have any of you ever thought about, like, why does a company hire someone? Like, clearly there's a job opening they need to fill, but like, why do they need to fill that? And what are you, because like, that's honestly, that's what you need to do. You need to think about that. So the thesis that the Golden Circle proposes is that if we understand why the company is hiring someone, what it is they're trying to do, then we can better organize our process and we have a better chance of achieving our result. That's the theory. So, so why do we hire someone? Hiring someone is a huge pain in the butt for us. So I want to kind of recap why we do it. And the first thing to note is that a team, not the company, decides that it can't meet its goal. So if you're at Acme Widget, it's not Acme Widget that decides, hey, we need to hire 100 people. It's a team in there, and they've decided, for whatever reason, we can't meet our goals. And so they have a gap. Sometimes that gap is there's not enough people, they just don't have enough labor to do it, or they might not have the right skills. But the point is, they have to go to their leadership and they have to negotiate. This is what we have to do all the time. I'm doing it today, literally. I have to go to my leadership and say, I can't hit the goals that you need me to because I need more people or I need the right skills. In some cases, they say, fine, don't hit those goals. We won't do that project. But oftentimes, you get some budget, you open a new position. So we're talking about a team that has a gap. So why are we hiring? We are hiring someone to fill the gap to meet our goals. And I know this seems super obvious. Maybe you're thinking, why am I in this seminar? But this is key because everything you do going forward is oriented towards showing that you can fill this gap, right? So I have a gap, I need to get it filled. The whole point of your resume is to convince me that you are the person that can fill the gap. So when you ask questions like, what should I put on my resume? When you ask questions like, what should I leave off of my resume? What skills are the best skills that I should have? What experience is the right experience to put down? What classes should I be taking? You understand that there is no answer to that, because the real answer is that whatever tells me that you're going to fill my gap, that's the right answer. Okay, and we're going to use this lens throughout the rest of the talk. I'm going to get into the whole process and resumes and everything, but I want you to remember this, that your goal is not to convince me that you're a good person. It's not to convince me you have wonderful character or that you would be a great addition to my team. I'm being a bit rough with this, but honestly, I don't care. In a sense, what I care is that you can help me out, that you can fill this gap permanently, but you can fill this gap, and we can reach the goals on the team. Okay, so let's knowing that, let's move on to the hiring process, because not a lot of people understand what are the steps that you're going to end up going through, that we, the tech company, are going to put you through in order to get the job. So there's the part you know already, which is the hiring manager, and that's what we call them. The hiring manager is going to submit a job listing to the recruiting department. Recruiting department publishes it on the company website or on LinkedIn or on Glassdoor, or whatever it is that they publish it out there into the wild, where everybody sees it, and then all of you are going to apply with a resume and a cover letter. And we'll talk about what that means. You're always going to send a cover letter if possible, and we'll talk. In a few slides, we'll talk about why I think that's important. Sometimes people don't want a cover letter. There may be not even a way to submit it. That's totally fine, but always send one if you can. The second part of the job process, so that's just like hey, the job's out there, I'm going to apply. there's two steps that you have to get through essentially in order to be working at a company. First, you have to get the interview. The second part is going to be, then you got to get the job. Getting the interview is the job of the resume and the cover letter. So what will happen is you send in your application. The recruiters are going to get those applications and they're going to filter through them. For a particular job, a recruiter may get hundreds of resumes. No lie. And they're going to be handling multiple positions at once. Riot, my company, for example, has over 100 engineering positions open right now. I guarantee you we don't have 100 recruiters, each one working on each of those open positions. So they're multitasking all over the place. As I said, they may get hundreds of applications per position. This hurts, right? On average, a recruiter, they've done studies on this, and on average, a recruiter will spend less than 10 seconds on your resume. So all of you that are crafting these incredibly well-structured resumes with lots of description and bullets and text, that's not necessarily helping you. You need to put the information that convinces them that you are going to fill that gap as prominently as you possibly can. The recruiter's going to screen through those hundreds of applicants, and they're going to then do a preliminary phone screen. You're going to get a phone call from them if they kind of look at your resume and say, oh, this sort of seems okay. They're going to call you, and the preliminary phone screen is basically very, very simple. It's like, are you still interested in this job, or have you found something else? Can you work in the United States legally? Would you mind relocating to wherever we are? Those kinds of questions. Pretty softball, lightweight kind of stuff. They may get down to 10, maybe 20 resumes for that position. And then they send those to the hiring manager. The hiring manager now is going to read the resume and the cover letter. And they are going to be looking for a little bit deeper. They're not just going to do 10 seconds, but they're not going to do a huge amount of time either. They've got their day job to do. If they like you, maybe 10 of you, they're going to reach out and they're going to do a phone screen as well. Do you fit the values of the company? Are you kind of interested in the sorts of things we do? Do you have any experience? Can you clarify a few things on your resume? That's the nature of what they're going to do. This is where these two places right here, the recruiter and the hiring manager, are the main points of contact for your resume and for your cover letter. These are where you're trying to get through. If you successfully get through the screens and the cover letter, now it's about getting the job because you've got the interview. The first part of a tech interview process is you're going to do a tech screen with engineers. This is usually a live coding test and something that everybody dreads. We'll talk a little bit about a live coding test, and I'll give you my tip for how to get through the worst of them. But you will almost certainly these days be asked to do a live coding test. If you are more senior, if you're a more senior person on this call, or you've been away from keyboard for a while, you've been away from code for a while, then you might get to take a take-home coding test, but there's no guarantee. You're probably going to do a live coding test. If you do well, you've made it to the onsite. You're going to get an onsite interview. And when I say onsite, what I really mean is you're going to have multiple interviews throughout the day. Almost everyone does 4, maybe 5 interviews, usually with 2 people each time. So it's a whole day kind of thing. At the end of all this, the HM, the hiring manager, and the team are going to review the candidates, and someone or more than one is going to get an offer. This is the process that most tech companies I've seen use. Not all of them, they're especially smaller ones may cut some of these processes out. But basically it's make your application, get past the recruiter, get past the HM, get past the tech screen, get past the interview, and then you get an offer. You can do it. I know you can. So how can you help improve your odds of doing this? So let's talk about some of the tools that we have available to us. Resumes and cover letters are the things that we're using to get the interview. So what is the point of a resume? Why are we making one of these things? We talked about it before. Point of a resume is to prove to me that you are the person that's going to fill the gap that I have. Whether it's through skills, well, it's almost always going to be through skills, but in particular, that you have the right skills and the right mindset to work and get the job done. Because it's not really, there's really no other reason why I'm hiring. And the point of a resume is, of course, as we mentioned, to get you an interview. So can this person fill the gap? What helps? What helps me? So the first thing I would say is that the things that you want to put in a resume most are what you can do or what you did. We'll contrast that in a second. What you can do and what your actual tech skills are. Not every tech skill in the world, but the things that you're actually good at. And you make it all easy to find. What are the things that actually don't help a lot or don't help as much, maybe? What do you know? I know all these classes. Maybe it's useful, probably not. Something that I call tech skill salad. I'm gonna have an example of this in a minute, but I encourage you all to avoid it. What I mean by tech skill salad is where somebody in a block puts every tech term, acronym, name, etc. they've ever found in all history, down to putting like, I know Windows, right? So they list everything out, this giant salad of stuff. And the trouble is with those is I can't find out what you actually know, what you're actually good at, and what is just in the salad. Coursework. Everybody's done data structures, everybody's done algorithms. It can be helpful. It's generally speaking not very useful. I don't really know if it's going to help me fill my gap at all. Non-tech experience, should you put it? You have to judge, but remember that the fact you were a barista or an intern somewhere that at a non-tech company, that doesn't help me know that you're actually going to be the right person to fill my gap. Soft skills, everybody got excellent communication skills. You'll find once you start reading resumes, everybody has excellent communication skills, they say. And references. References are sometimes needed, sometimes, so you should plan to have some. And contact people ahead of time and ask that they'll write you a good reference. But you won't need them usually until after an interview. It's usually like they pretty much want to hire you and they just want to make sure you're not, an axe murderer. So, yeah. So I want to do a little bit of a comparison of like the kinds of things that I see in a resume, and I'm going to time it so that you kind of get a sense for this is how a recruiter actually will see my resume. Okay, so I'm hiring for, let's say, a tools developer, and I need someone who can work on kind of some front end code. I want someone who can write me some front end tools developer kind of stuff. That's kind of the job description. That's the gap that I need to fill. So here we go. Here's the first listing. Okay, you got that, right? Remember, I'm just scanning. Here's the second listing. What do you think? Any difference? Here they are together. The first one is an example of what I call tech skill salad. I have no idea if you have front-end experience when I scan that. Yeah, somewhere in there's JavaScript. I see React. Oh yeah, okay, so they do have some, but like it's hard for me to tell. I've got to read all this stuff. Whereas the second one, boom, I know exactly what you can do. I can move on to the next thing and look at your experience or look at your projects, look at your other skills. I don't have to sort of sit here trying to figure it out and use up that 10 seconds just on this. So I hope I make that point. There's a few things I would note around here. Do you find anything sort of vaguely annoying about that skills section? Like the fact that they put like Google Docs, for example. Like Confluence, maybe not super useful. Also, like personally for me, I see something like C and C++ together, and that drives me crazy because those are two very different languages, even though they have similar constructs to them. So just be aware that, trying to put all these things down by it oftentimes is something that like people do in order to get past what they call an applicant tracking system, or ATS. It might help you, but chances are good that when you get to that hiring manager, they're going to look at it and go, this is, they don't know these things. They just took a class in them. So just keep that in mind. All right. Let's see, my second comparison. So this is about when you write what it is that your experience is, whether it be from a job or internship, or whether it be from a project. You want to try to highlight again what you can do, not just that you have some experience or that you know something. So I'll do these a little bit slower. So this is a contrived example. I made it up, but it's similar to ones I see all the time. So it's like, hey, I'm a lead developer. Sounds pretty good on this game, I guess, called, yeah, it was a platform game in Unity, okay. Coordinated 5 engineers, did something with ropes, not exactly sure what. And oh, look, it won most creative. That's cool. Does that help me know if I'm a game developer, whether you can write games? Well, I see out of all that, I see that you got some Unity experience, but I really don't know a whole lot more. Now I've got another one. What about this one? This is the same job description or the same experience, but I've just reworded it. And in fact, I've even downplayed this. I just say I'm the developer, not even lead developer. But I mean, starting to use gaming terms like 2D side-scrolling platformer. I'm listing out a bunch of tech right there at the top. Bang, this is what I used. And then when I actually read those descriptions, it's stuff I did. I did this, I did that, I did the other. Does it list that I won the award? It doesn't. Does it list that I worked with 4 or 5 other people? It doesn't. Is that gonna hurt me that I don't list those? Again, this is where you got to use your intuition. Judge from the job listing. How urgent does it sound? How detailed does it sound? If they're just looking for general people, then maybe you put those things. But if they're like, hey, I need a game developer to work on this game, and I need Unity experience, which one are you going to look at? Which one are you going to hire? Here they are side by side. If you're a serious game developer and you need someone to come in, sit down, and get to work. Same person, same job, same game. Just it's much more dynamic sounding. It's much more detailed. It's much more, here's what I can do. It's just an example. I'm trying to give you a flavor of this, but hopefully you get that. So how will you stand out? I'm going to tell you that every single entry-level resume almost in the world was going to have these 3 things in it. It's going to have your computer science skills, classes, and labs. Like I mentioned, they're going to say I was a tutor in the TA lab, in the computer lab for undergraduates, something like that. It's going to list some skills in terms of I worked on a game project, I worked on a networking project, and I took these classes. You're going to list a bunch of projects that you did in school, which are good. Don't misunderstand. Those are all good, but they're all projects that kind of were sandboxed for you. Here's the scope of what they are, kind of spelled out. You need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do the other, and then you kind of executed on those. So those are good, but we'll move on. And then passion. Everybody says they're passionate about something. Passionate about gaming, passionate about learning, passionate about solving problems. If you're going to put passion down, make sure that you are, because passion is an easy term to throw around. It's not just interest. So your resume is going to stand out from all those other resumes, right? Because you're going to list those specific skills. You're not just going to say, hey, I worked with other people on a game. You're going to say, no, I built this thing. I used this subsystem. I added an API, etc. You're going to have projects that are assigned for personal initiative if you can. So I worked on this project all on my own just because I wanted to. And because I thought it was really cool. I was passionate about learning and I wanted to do this thing. So I goofed around with it and I learned it. That kind of experience, I did everything. You had to do everything. You had to do source control, you had to debug it, you had to you had to maybe deploy it somewhere to try it out and run it. That wasn't just the local server. A bunch of stuff that's useful in production, in computer science production. And hopefully, especially if you are past university and you're looking for an entry-level job, you're going to have passion projects, things that you just think you can't go to bed at night because you just want to make this thing work. You just think it's super cool that you're making this Spotify playlist classifier thing or whatever because you love music or whatever. It can be anything that you want. It doesn't even have to be in the area that you are applying for. So if it's, for example, for me, for gaming, it doesn't have to be a game. I just want to see that you can code, that you can write software. So how will you stand out? So some quick resume tips, moving it along. I recommend you create a master resume with everything in it. So like bigger than a page, as much stuff in it as you can possibly think. And then every time you see a job listing, you go in, you copy it, you cut it down to fill that gap. You take the parts out that don't fill the gap, and you leave the parts in that do fill the gap. On a resume, be honest. Don't make up stuff. Especially don't exaggerate what you know. If I see it on a resume and you eventually get to me, I'm going to ask you about it. And if I can instantly tell that it's, you don't really know this thing, then you've broken my trust and you're already at a disadvantage. So be honest. Be professional. I only need your phone and email these days. We don't need your address. Nobody, well, maybe some places do. We don't. And make sure your email is something legit. Blaze 420 is not professional, right? It's fun, but it's not professional. So maybe make sure that's not what you're using. LinkedIn and GitHub, if you have them, should be listed. I think you should have them for various reasons. We can get to at the very end when we talk about getting that first job, but they are optional. You don't have to have them. Not everybody does. Don't be clever, cutesy. I've seen people who put as their interest, I love sunsets. I love walking on the beach. I've seen people say things like they had their name and right under it in quotes, they had the better maker. They were trying to be clever, didn't really land. So I recommend you just avoid that kind of thing. And here's just a tip in general for you guys. You are your own brand now. It is no longer the case that you go work at IBM, you get a job at like IBM or Microsoft and you work there for 30 years or 40 years. I mean, you could, but generally speaking, you don't. You are much more like a freelance artist of old, speaking from my DreamWorks days. You are like a freelance artist and you are responsible for your brand. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is how these are the areas I work in. Here's my portfolio, which for most of us, it's now GitHub. Here's my portfolio. Here's my resume on LinkedIn. I am connected. I am part of the tech community. You need to be a brand. You need to market yourself properly. I recommend. Great. So we talked about the resume. What is the point of the cover letter? If we've got a resume that's put all these skills out, what is the point of a cover letter? Well, the resume is showing your skills. It's telling what you can do. And it's primarily focused on facts, right? The cover letter is where you show your personality. Who are you? What is your story? This is where you get a little chance to actually explain, this is who I am and this is why you should hire me. And this is much more about your opinions, your personal values, etc. If I have two resumes from two entry-level folks and they're pretty much the same, but I've got a resume, it tells me who's different. It tells me what they believe in and which one is maybe more aligned to my particular company compared to some other company. What makes a good cover letter? More than anything else, being authentic. Don't use cliches. There's a lot of templates out there on the web, and they all use words like, I can't tell you how many start out, ever since I was a little kid, I always dreamed of X. I always dreamed of video games. I always dreamed of drawing, whatever it is. Or I'm passionate about, again, the passion. I'm a great fit. I'm uniquely qualified. These are all cliches. Fine, do something better. I know you can. A sense of humor is totally okay. In fact, it's really nice. You don't have to be very strict and formal in your cover letter. At least not for most tech companies I know. Maybe for an insurance company or a bank, perhaps, but certainly I like humor. Be careful though. If it's the kind of humor you think you have to say like JK, haha at the end, or put a little emoji or something like just kidding, I'm laughing, Kappa, maybe that's not the right kind of humor. Doesn't translate well. And whatever you put in that letter, no BS, right? You want to make sure that it's kind of like a gate factor for you. It's like if you took this resume, or sorry, cover letter, if you took this cover letter and put it right at the top of your profile on LinkedIn, you wouldn't be embarrassed by it. You wouldn't feel like, yeah, okay, I kind of took some liberties and I didn't really do this, or I kind of exaggerated how much effect I had on this. It's like, be honest, be yourself, be truthful. That will convey the best to me, I guarantee you. You can tell it in just the tone. Be concise. I don't want a memoir. People write me very long cover letters. I read the first sentence of each. That's kind of it, because that's all I have time for. So be concise, maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 paragraphs if you've got a really cool story to tell. You might want to think about, like, if I read the first sentence of each, that might be your elevator pitch. Who are you? What are you? Why are you here? An elevator pitch, for those who don't know, is the idea of if we started at the ground floor in an elevator and I asked you to tell me who or what you are, by the time we got to the top, I would know. So it's got to be that concise. People ask me for a template, so it's going to vary depending on that gap, depending on the place the context. But I kind of like 3 paragraphs. First one is, generally speaking, who are you and why are you different? Like, what is it special about you? Think about it, reflect on it. Why are you different? What is special about you? Second paragraph, why are you interested in my company? This gives you a chance to actually do some research on the company and maybe explain to me what we have in common, or why in particular you're a good fit. You would be amazed number of cover letters I get that have no idea really what they're talking about in terms of my company, the place I work. Like, yeah, I've already been into drawing. Well, how does that help me? I need something more. And then the last paragraph, it's again that, why should I choose you? How do you fill my gap? Why are you the person that I should hire? And again, like, focus on the job listing, focus on your company research, and craft something that comes up and says, like, I am the right person. You need to hire me. Tech screens. But first of all, let me do a check-in with Shalom or Taylor. Is the audio good? Is any questions that we should address before we continue on real quick?
No, I think you're good. Audio is good. We have we have questions coming in, so just whenever you're ready, we can hit them off.
Okay. Let's forge ahead then. So tech screens. Tech screens are a little bit different. So all of this advice, tips, whatever, so far has been, I think, sort of largely true for any job. You could use this information to get a job in business, I suppose. But one thing is particular to tech, which is a tech screen. And the tech screen everybody dreads, and they hate it. And everybody asks me, why do I have to do this? Why do we make you do this thing, this live coding test? And it's because in the end, converting desired outcomes, which is kind of my fancy term for saying, like, the thing I want you to do, or the thing that a producer would want you to do. Hey, can you make me one of these by Friday? Hey, we just found out that players don't have this and they need a button to do that. Converting that desired outcome into code on demand, like under the gun, is literally the job. That's literally what you as a coder and a programmer do all day, every day. Sometimes they're much longer term, like, hey, I need a whole new subsystem, I need a whole new game, and it'll take a lot longer. But generally speaking, this is the job. Somebody tells you what to do, you can convert that weird verbal description into some actual practical code. You can find a place to start, and you can do it. But what do I get from it? What in particular am I looking for? So there's a couple of things. First of all, I'm looking to see how comfortable you are writing code. I can tell most likely within 5 or 10 minutes, whether you write code regularly or don't. And when you did write code last or whatever, like how proficient you were at it. You can just see it in the way people type. You'll have some people sit down and just start banging out a subroutine, no problem at all, fill in some template, some sort of like structure, and then they'll start working. And you can just tell, yeah, they code all the time. Some people will be like, let's see, what was the syntax for a function again? And you can just tell this is not something they do often or a lot of. So that's one thing that I'm getting by watching you. In some cases, it's about how sophisticated are you? So do you write everything in raw primitives, or do you actually use higher level language constructs and libraries and stuff to kind of abstract some of that away? How concise is your code? How compact is it? Do you use advanced features? Do you just use the most basic features? So that's another thing I can tell. Another thing is, how complete are you? This is a lot more about craft, right? So the other ones are kind of like, can you actually do coding at all? This is about craft. So do you use standards? Do you use like a normal idiom, or do you use some sort of weird way of structuring your code? Do you choose good names for your variables? Do you check for errors? Do you worry about edge case? What happens if this is a null? And like what would happen? Those kinds of things. How do you handle setbacks? It's almost inevitable, and don't worry, you should get this, like be okay with this ahead of time. It's almost inevitable you are going to hit a dead end at some point in your test. It's okay, we expect it, we're used to it, it's no big deal. Question is, what do you do about it? That's the thing that we're interested in, because we all hit setbacks and stuff in our code. So if you do too, we want to see that you're able to handle those well. How do you collaborate? Do you work with us? It is okay to ask questions. There's nothing worse than seeing somebody sit there, oh, I don't know what to do, and visually tilting in front of you. So collaborate, ask us questions. And I'm going to tell you now, for me, this is not true for everyone, but for me, solving the problem is secondary. I don't care about that. What I care about is getting a sense of how good a coder you are. And trick questions are dumb. I hate them. Some people like them. I think they're dumb, but I'm telling you that now so that you don't feel alone in that regard. Whoops. So here's my tip. The best tech screening advice you will ever get. I've seen this happen all the time, and so this is my number one bit of advice. It's number one there. Do the dumbest, simplest, most brute force thing that comes to mind first. Don't get in your head and start, they want to see that I know some tricky way of doing it, or I should optimize my memory, or I shouldn't, Simplest, dumbest thing you can possibly think of, even if it's brute force. Then, when you get it working, then you worry about those other things. Because when you're first get that question and you're sitting there and we're sitting there with our arms crossed, okay, show me. Your brain is on a loop going, oh my God, they're watching. Oh my God, they're watching. Oh, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you can't think straight. So just do the obvious thing, simplest thing, and then go clean it up. It actually looks good. It looks like you're like yes, I get code done quickly, and then I optimize. It looks good. So that is my number one bit of advice. I give that advice to people before their tech screens, and when I do and I don't, or I forget, I've seen remarkable differences. So there you go. Take it as you will. Let's see, how are we doing on time? 40 minutes. Interviews. If you make it past the tech screen, if you did well enough in the tech screen, whether or not you solve the problem for me or whatever it is that the particular place requires. And oh, by the way, they often take about an hour to an hour and a half, if anyone's curious. And I will usually start you off with a very easy one, because I want you to build your confidence. I want to see you do I want to see the real you, not the terrified of failing you. I'll start you off with a softball, and then if you do well, I'll upgrade you to harder and harder problems as we go through. But it's about an hour and a half. Tips for success for an interview. If you don't know something, say so. Don't fake it. So I see this all the time. People are like, oh yeah, that's a this. And you're like, what? No. They're like, oh, well, maybe and you can see, like, people will give me answers and I'll be, is that a question? Are you asking me if this is what it is? Or are you telling me this is what it is? If you don't know, say, I don't know. It's okay. In fact, I've seen many reviews afterwards where people say, I love that he was honest. And he said, I don't know. Or she. I love that she said, my knowledge ends here. I would love to know more. If you want to guess, if you think, oh man, that's on the tip of my tongue, I want to guess, say so. So first you say, I don't know, but I would guess if I had to that it's this. Or I would speculate that it's this. That's great. That's nice. I'm actually seeing you try to like reason your way through stuff, but I know you're not just trying to BS me. Don't be a pushover. Don't be a jerk. And by pushover, what I mean is occasionally, particularly if someone is really feeling kind of uncertain, I'll sort of push back a little bit on something. It's like really, you think that's what it is? Or, well, okay, that's a good answer, but what about X kind of thing? And see if people, too often I see people go, oh yeah, that was stupid. I don't know why I said that. It's like, hold your ground. If you think you're right, don't just assume I'm right, because I might just be trying to see, do you have opinions that matter and that you're okay with potentially having a conflicting opinion? We can be in misalignment, that's okay. But also don't be a jerk. I've had people say, well, that's just stupid. Believe it or not. Let's see. Oops, research the company beforehand. If you don't do this, you're throwing away opportunity to impress. Research that company ahead of time. Read every web page you can get your hands on. Read every news article you can get your hands on. A good interview with a company is going to ask you questions about the company. Why do you think you would work here? Why do you think you would fit in well here? What do you think our problems are? What do you think of our competitors? You got answers. That's pretty elevating you above the rest, let me tell you, because most people don't have answers. Prepare good questions to ask us. This is not a ritual. At the end of every interview, people go, oh, okay, so we want to give you 5 or 10 minutes to ask us any questions. There are a shockingly huge percentage of candidates who say, oh, no, I'm good. Or they'll say, well, so like, what's a day like here? Or something like that. This is like dating, right? You are going to be spending potentially a couple of years of your life at this company, potentially earning experience in a particular area that you're going to then try and use to get a better job later. You may be relocating where you live. You better make sure that company fits what you want, that their attitude is right, that they don't have problems that you don't want to exist with, right? And don't simply accept from someone that like, hey, I already asked that question to the first student, he already answered it. I get that in later interviews. People say like, oh no, I already asked them. People answered them. Ask again. What if 2 people gave you different answers that are conflicting? That's a warning sign. Pay attention to this stuff. This matters, and it makes you look like you deserve to be hired. We should be. You're a pro. You're not just some desperate noob who's like, please give me a job. You're like, I'm here to interview you as well. It's a good sign. And if you're really brave and you really want to be pro and there's time, ask for feedback at the end. I've had, I don't know, a couple dozen candidates only ever ask me for feedback at the end. And it's so refreshing. It's like, oh yeah, let me tell you what I thought you talked about really well and what I thought didn't go well. I'll tell you, I'll be honest, many people will. You will learn, you might not, even if you're not going to get the job, even if the feedback isn't great, now you know why you didn't get the job and you can fix it for next time. Virtual interviews, it's a thing these days, right? Even beforehand, if you weren't co-located, oftentimes you might do a virtual interview, but especially today. More than anything else, I want to tell you, this is still an interview. This is not just a phone call that happens to have video. So show up like you mean it. You need to have the right attitude. And what do I mean by like the right attitude? You need to be dressed right. I don't want to see you in gym clothes. I don't want to see you in like a tank top with flip-flops or whatever. I've had people show up. It looks like they, honest to God, it looks like they just rolled out of bed. Hair's all mussed up. They look all sleepy. They're kind of rumpled. Don't eat. I've had people eat in front of me in an interview. Don't check your phone. People check their phone in front of me in interviews. You know, it buzzes and they're like, oh, yeah. If you wouldn't do it in the office, don't do it on the video call. Okay. Find the right location. You need to be somewhere private. I don't want to see your family members, your significant others, your kids walking by back and forth in the background, cooking dinner, etc. Whatever. Find someplace private. It needs to be someplace quiet. I've had people literally do interviews from inside of like a Starbucks. All the people chatter, yada, 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 plates clicking, clanking, whatever, doors opening. I can't, I'm like, are you serious? Like, find a place. Get a nice background, get good lighting. My favorite lighting stories involve people who put a really bright light behind them, oftentimes a window at sunset or something, and it washes out the camera and it's like witness protection interview. It's like, I can't see you, you're just this black silhouette. So good lighting, no pets. I don't want to see you fussing with your dog, your cat. Sit up properly. I know these all sound kind of obvious, but honestly, people will sit cross-legged on their chair in front of me in the interview. It feels really casual and really like, I'm just kind of here. I'm kind of bored. I'm not that interested. That's the way I feel. So it's not a great look. The right tech, get a good microphone if you can. There's nothing worse than hearing that horrible reverb echo sound of everything, especially if you're not a native English speaker. Oftentimes it's really difficult to understand what you're saying. Camera location, wherever you can, try to put your camera somewhere in this field of view. If the camera's over here and you're looking at your screen over here, I never get to see your face. I never get to see your eyes. I never get to see your expression. It's not a deal breaker, but it's not great. And test your tech beforehand. Can't count the number if you can. I mean, all of these are, of course, we're going to be reasonable about things, but if you can, test it ahead of time. There's nothing worse than I call in and my AirPods don't work. Let me try this. Okay, can you hear it? Does it work now? All right, let me call you on my phone and we'll do the video. Like, sort it out ahead of time. This is an interview. You wouldn't show up like that at the office, so don't do it virtual. All right, we are almost done. And then you can ask me tons of questions. Internships and first jobs. I've got a couple of pages on that. So internships, I cannot overstate the importance of internships. You want to get an internship if you can. They are a very important source of offer. It's not so much that you need internships in order to go get that first job, although it does help. It's that the internship becomes a job. If you are a successful intern, if it goes well, and it usually does, it's pretty rare you mess up an internship, chances are very, very good that you will get a permanent offer from that company later on when you get out of school. You should always be on the lookout for them. They come and go all the different times, at all different times. They are not all in one season. Sometimes they open up whenever the company has time for it or has some program that they're running. They're running a summer program, whatever it may be. So follow companies on social media. They will usually post that they have opportunities. LinkedIn, Handshake, and Glassdoor are all sources of that. Handshake, I know in particular, is good for student internships. Use search engines like search. Like, you got to work at it, but you want these opportunities. And this is an important last note on that. Apply as soon as you do. As soon as you find out, apply. Don't wait. The reason there's two reasons why. The first is some internships just close right up. They're open for a week and then they're done. Why? Because they got a ton of applicants, even in that small window. They don't need to be open any longer. So get yourself in there as soon as you can. The second reason, this is actually more common, is that they use rolling applications. We do this at Riot. We open up all our internships, and then as applications come in, we evaluate them. Each one that comes in, we look at, As soon as we find one that's good enough that we want to offer an internship to, boom, we give it to them. So the idea that like you've got 2 months or something, there's 2-month window, you need to get in before the deadline, and then we'll consider all the applicants. That just isn't the case in many situations. So beware. Do it soon. The catch-22, needing experience to get experience. This is, I didn't get an internship, but now I'm graduated. What do I do? How do I get that job? I want to say something important about years of experience because this always comes up. Years of experience is not an absolute requirement. I don't actually require you to have 2 years of work experience. I could care less whether you worked or not. What I care about is that 2 years of experience is a proxy for a certain set of skills. It's kind of like an alias, if you will, for a certain set of skills that someone who's been in the industry for 2 years probably has by now. I don't want to have to list out that you know how to use source control, that you know how to do job automation, that you understand how to run a debugger, that you know how to write unit tests, that you can do error handling, etc. Those are all things that like someone who's been in the industry for 2 years knows how to do. And that's what 2 years of experience means to me. So nobody, as far as I know, ever is bothering to check the dates, particularly like, oh, no, they've only got 19 months, not 24. Sorry, nobody cares, right? What I want, again, to go back to our lens, can you do the job or not? Do you have the skills? I don't care whether it's work experience. I don't care if it's projects. Do you have skills that I can use to get my job done? So if you don't have a job, if you don't have that work experience, you got to build those skills on your own. You have to work on that on your own because they don't, generally speaking, at least not as far as my experience has led me to see, they don't generally really teach that stuff very strongly at university. They're training you on the more theoretical stuff. So, what is my recommendation? If you think you can do it, like if it says 2 years experience, but you think, you know, I'm reading this job listing and I think I could do this job. Great. What are you going to do? You're going to make that skills resume that we talked about. You're going to explain in your cover letter, this is where you put your little bit of story. Hey, you know what? I don't have work experience, but I am so good, or we don't want to say it that way, right? But I am so so sort of like driven or so eager to do this that I have been working and putting my own initiative into this to learn the skills that I need to know. And if you look at my resume, you'll see I did this when I did this personal project, I did this, that, and the other. And then you know what? Go for it anyways. Apply. The worst that will happen is they'll be like, oh, nah, never mind. They won't get the job. But you will get 2 things. I guarantee you will get 2 things. The first is that you will get familiar with the process. You will get comfortable. This is how this works. I do this. I sort of this is how this goes. And you will get easier. You will get more comfortable. And with that comfort will come confidence. You will feel like you actually are part of the industry, sort of. You'll be like, I've done this before. I know how this works. I almost got in. Your resume maybe gets a little bit better each time. You know, you have a little more skills to put on it. Go for it. What do you got to lose? And this is my final slide. And then we'll ask questions. You can ask questions. I know I've gone a long time. This is really in the nutshell for me. How badly do you want this, really? A resume and a degree is often not enough because I've got this gap and a degree doesn't fill that gap. So I would ask, how many companies have you tried? And I'm not going to go through these all, but how many companies have you tried? Did you stop after the FANG companies? Do you know what FANG is? But did you stop after FANG, or did you go to the 10 biggies and then stop and go, I can't get a job? There's thousands of companies out there, and every survey they do is that people are dying for talent. Maybe you have to start a little bit smaller to begin before you ladder up. Same way people go to community college and then go to the university. Maybe you start at a small indie company and then you apply to Riot. It's very competitive. It's very hard to get into, but it's much easier to get into if you've worked somewhere else for a while and you have that experience. and this, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to highlight the second one. Your job, if you're out of school, your job is getting a job. Putting in 2 hours to fill out a job application and customize your resume for that job application is not enough. You need to do a bunch of these things. Anyways, that is what I have for you today. I'm happy to stay for as long as we need to answer questions. And thank you so much for coming. I hope it was useful.
Thank you,
Shalom.
Michael. That was really awesome. Even I learned something to apply to my resume and cover letter.
Cool.
So we're going to move on to Q&A session. So the first question that I have here, if you are looking for internships, but you don't have a lot of tech experience, what courses would that help?
Well, let's go back to our guiding light. What is the internship that you're applying for? If you're, for example, if I were applying for a game engineering internship at Riot, then the skills and the classes that would be best to have are game-related skills, game-related classes. If, on the other hand, you were applying for a services or back-end or full stack position at Riot, then understanding databases and networking and perhaps more Java experience would be useful. There is no one answer that will work better than any other. You just need to, again, read that job listing, look at it really closely. We spend actually a lot of time and effort trying to put in just the right things in that job listing so that you know what we need, and try your best to fit that.
Got it. Thank you. So the next question is, any advice to how to approach a career fair? So we have one coming up.
A career fair, is it like companies doing hiring? Is that or looking for candidates?
Yeah, so there's going to be multiple companies coming in and talking to students.
So I would, if it were me in that position, I would probably take my master resume, my master cover letter, and try to come up with something that is some hybrid of them that I felt was as appropriate as I could get for that particular career fair. And that's what I would bring. If you can learn what companies are at the career fair ahead of time. Actually, I can stop my sharing here, right? Yes, okay. If you can learn what those companies are ahead of time, then you can do a bit of research on those companies and find out, information that might help you when you're talking to the recruiter from that company. You know who their competitors are. Maybe you've heard, scour the news kind of thing so that like, oh, I see you have a new thing coming out next month or whatever. That's very interesting. I'm really into this sort of thing. I did this class a year ago where we did something similar, etc.
Got it. Thank you. So the next question is how to answer the question, why should we hire you during an interview?
Again, I mean, these are all, there are no one answers, right? How to answer, why should we hire you? First of all, I would say you need to have an answer in your own head, right? Regardless of them, like what would, if you were sitting there on your couch, eating ice cream, trying to decide, like, why should these people hire me? Like, do that ahead of time so that you're not frustrated or flustered, I guess is the word I should say. So you're not flustered when the time comes. But why should you hire? It depends. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to the hiring manager? Are you talking to engineers? Are you talking to like a delivery lead or a product person? Because the answer will be different. If it's an engineer, it's because I have the experience. I have some skills that can work well with. You've told me that you guys do this, and I'm able to do that, or I really like this stuff. If it's a product person, you can say, I understand what you're trying to build. I did something similar, and I think that we're really aligned on that. I love the future that you've mapped out for the company. It all kind of depends. Is this person a very senior person? You might give a different answer compared to a more junior person. If it's one of your peers, you might be it might be a more casual, more friendly kind of answer. If it's a higher, more senior person, it might be a more formal, more sort of thoughtful answer.
Got it. Thank you. So the next question is, what's the best way to prepare for a coding challenge at a gaming company?
Unfortunately, gaming companies are all over the map in terms of what the coding challenge is. And I would also, it's complicated also by the fact that the vast majority of engineering jobs at a gaming company don't actually involve games, if that makes sense. So when I started at Riot, I'd never worked in a game. What they called me when the interview, when the recruiter first called me, I never heard of Riot Games. They didn't know what it was. And yet I'm working there. I don't write any game code. I don't move any graphics. Same thing was true at DreamWorks. I didn't do any art, any movie pixels kind of thing. So what you know is, or what the coding challenge is going to be kind of dependent on what that particular task or what the job opening, I guess, is. So someone asked, like, are you going to ask me, once asked me, are they going to ask me the minutia of how to implement some incredibly difficult linked list or balanced tree or some internal algorithm or something like that? And I said, well, generally, I would never do that. I'm not going to make you get up on a whiteboard and ask you to do some incredibly low level stuff, because we don't do that. I don't do that. That's not one of the roles I hire for. So I might well ask you, well, do you know what a linked list is? And when I might use it, particularly if we're working on some kind of design problem. But if it were a game team, and maybe the standard libraries that do linked list, the linked list implementation that you can just get from Java or C++ or whatever, maybe it's in a particular place in the code where super high performance is needed. Like it's very memory sensitive, it's very performance oriented. You're worried about caching on the CPU or the GPU, that kind of stuff. Like then it might be completely appropriate for them to ask you some low level detailed coding problem. It just depends on your situation. Generally speaking, the questions I ask are the kinds of questions that in our coding test, the kinds of questions that could be answered in a subroutine. So I'm not looking for something huge. It's one function. There's usually a mix of iteration, data structures, looping, that sort of thing. And they're pretty straight. I usually ramp them up from easy to hard. The first one is usually pretty straightforward, because again, I mentioned it earlier, we want you to have a victory. They're honestly, I mean, unless they're kind of like jerks or they're like a little perverse, most people, they want you to do well. They're not here to like trip you up. I know people believe that, and there are people like that, but you don't want to work at that place anyway. So if you fail, don't worry. Generally speaking, they'll give you clues, they'll help you through it, because that's how we do it, right? Nobody comes to me and says, hey, Michael, I need something that will save the latest champions or your player's favorite champion or something in the database. I'll be like, okay, let me try this. No, that's stupid. That's not going to work. Let me try this. It's, hey, Joe, hey, Mary, can you help me? You're the database expert. What should I do here? It's okay to ask us those coding questions. It's even okay in some cases to go online and look stuff up. Depends on what it is. I'm not going to let you go look up the answer to the problem. But if, for example, you're stuck on some, oh gosh, is it a push or put or pop, or what is that method? I can't remember. What is the signature for that call? Go ahead. That's what I would do. I don't know if that helps, hopefully.
Thank you. So unfortunately, we only have one. We only have time for one last question. So this one's going to be, how strongly should I tailor my resume or cover letter to a particular employer, judging the fact that students send over hundreds of applications to employers?
I think you should to the degree that you have time and energy, right? you should always tailor to whatever the particular job posting is as much as you can. In fact, if you can even find out like who the hiring manager is or who the hiring team is and like make it hyper focused. So it's, you know, a lot of companies like Riot, we have an engineering blog. And so you can find out, for example, what team maybe, or even what person it is. And then you can go to LinkedIn and find out what they're into. And so like anything you can do to highlight to them, I'm easy. You don't have to put a huge amount of work into me, into training or waiting a long time before I'm ready to do the work, etc. I'm ready for this job. Anything you can do is going to help your chances, I believe. If you're sending out hundreds of resumes, I might ask you to, well, I mean, it would still stand. I would still say, please tailor it. But in addition to that, I might say something like, maybe try to start focusing a little more and put more quality time into the ones you are sending out rather than just blasting it to everyone. Because think about it from if you were getting a resume that had just been blasted out, it's just generic. Would you want that?
Got it. Quality over quantity. All right.
It's a balance, but yes.
Okay. Michael, thank you so much for coming here
Sure.
today and sharing all these tips. It was really helpful, even for me, even though I'm not in the computer science and engineering field.
Okay.
I'm sure our students all benefits from your presentation. So a friendly reminder, we have a computer engineering career fair coming up. It's on October 6th, and Taylor has been sending out the links in the chat. So please sign up because spots are limited. And with that, we will end this webinar. And thank you so much for attending. We hope you have a wonderful night and hopefully to see you again at the career fair.
Okay. Thank you all. See ya.
Have a great night.